want some sauce?
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
I have some half chicken breasts, and they're heating up, they're warming up. Inside just some water that's got some salt in it. How much salt? But I've got some half breasts, a couple of them. Half breasts are good because they've got bone, they've got skin, and just a little bit of fat. Okay, so that will end up giving flavor to the broth. But you can use any type of cheap chicken that you can find. I actually got 4 pieces of chicken of half breast for like $4. It was like $3 and something. If you want to make this like normal broth, you'd have to put like onion and garlic, and you'd have to put other herbs. You'd have to put like, you know, your carrot and your celery, and that stuff can start adding up. So it's a lot of times it's better or cheaper to get a can of broth or get like some chicken stock like this or chicken broth. Okay, a lot of times it's just cheaper. So that's what we're doing here. I'm not worried about this broth so much for the rice. This broth I can actually end up putting a little bit in dog food to make my dog more willing to eat it. Okay, so I let it come up to a boil, and then now I'm kind of like letting it simmer. This is where it looks like it's almost at a boil, and it's been doing that for about 20-25 minutes, something like that. And at this point, I know I can take this chicken out and put the other 2 pieces in. So now that our chicken has been cooked, what we're going to do is we're going to put this on about medium-low heat. Okay, and I'm going to be putting about 1/3 of a stick of butter. Now this is only because of the amount of rice that I'm putting in. You don't even have to put this really if you don't want to, but I'm going to. And in order to try to prevent this from browning, I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil. It doesn't really require too much. I'm going to be putting 1 cup of jasmine rice inside here. I'm going to be putting 1 onion. And what we need to do is we also need to put some garlic inside here. It's equivalent of about maybe 1½ cloves. Just like rice-a-roni, you know how you can brown it first? Which, by the way, if you wanted to break up some pieces of thin spaghetti and throw in here, you can. And that's essentially making like a rice-a-roni, because that's really the only difference. They say it's a San Francisco treat. I don't buy it. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to brown this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little bit of salt. Not a whole lot, because we're going to be putting stuff inside here a little bit later that's got salt. And I'm also going to be putting some black pepper. That's probably good. Now typically when it comes to cooking rice, you want to do a 1½ to 1 ratio, right? So it's 1½ liquid to whatever amount of rice you're adding. Of course, depending on the type of rice that you use, it's going to be changing. And if you're not planning on putting a lid on this, you have to add more liquid to it. Okay, so we're going to be actually adding a little bit more liquid to this than the 1½ because it's going to keep boiling out. It's going to evaporate. Okay, but I'm going to keep just kind of. And we can add herbs to this. We can add thyme if we want to, rosemary, whatever we want. And I actually might end up doing that here in a second. So I got some fresh thyme from the garden, quite a bit. Put some of that in there, and you see how it's starting to get toasted? That's perfect. Just like rice-a-roni. Okay, how long is it going to take? Maybe 10 minutes, something like that. Maybe a little bit longer, it's okay. But we want to get this nice and toasted. And then we're going to start adding our liquid in. Remember, we added 1 cup of, we can get this stem out of here. If you see a stem of like fresh thyme, you don't have to use fresh. You can use dry. I just use fresh because it's available. But just take the stem out. 1/3 of a cup. There we go. And remember, we're going to be doing 1½ That's 2/3. 1, 2. I'm going to put 3 because we have to add a little bit more simply because there's no lid that's going to go on. So it's been about maybe 5 minutes, and you can already see that it's absorbing a lot of the liquid. And we don't want to start adding more liquid until a little bit later, until it looks like about, I'd say maybe 90% of the liquid has been absorbed, because if not, we're going to end up making like a risotto, and it's going to start being almost like too starchy. It's going to be too gummy, as some people might say, too gummy. And what we want is this to be cooked all the way through have a great flavor and stuff like that, but not be all sticky and overly cooked. And that's what the chicken broth does, is it adds huge flavor because the rice is like a sponge. It's going to end up absorbing whatever's outside here, right? You see how it's starting to really absorb right here? And we're starting to lose moisture. This right here is telling us that it's about time for us to add a little bit more. So I'm going to put the rest of the water in that's from the mixed vegetables, which isn't a lot. If you do have a lid, you could put a lid on this and it would help tremendously, but there's no reason to do that. And we're going to pour a little bit more broth inside here, a little bit more chicken broth. Okay, so I had just tasted it and it's almost perfect. It's like 95% cooked, but there's still a little moisture inside here, right? Flavor is incredible. So what we're going to do is I've got some fresh broccoli I had cut up into small pieces. All of it goes in. The can of mixed vegetables, that goes in. Now neither one of those has salt. Keep that in mind, but they both have moisture. So we do need to taste this for salt here in just a little bit after some of the broccoli cooks and some of the moisture kind of absorbs into the rice and all that other good stuff, okay? But during the time that this stuff is heating up, okay, because it's already been cooked. You have to remember, it's in a can. It's already been cooked. Fresh broccoli, there's nothing wrong with it being fresh or being raw. But a lot of people do have a tendency to kind of turn from it if it's too raw. But now we have to take the piece of chicken that we had boiled and we need to shred it. And see, the amount of chicken that we're putting in here really is just from one breast. So you get a lot for a little here. Keep in mind that the chicken has just a little salt. The broccoli has no salt. The vegetables that from the can have just a little salt. The broth has a lot of salt. Okay, unless you get the low sodium. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to mix this stuff up, and we need to let it heat up together, and then after we give this a few minutes of just kind of sitting here and cooking and heating up together, we can take a taste and see what kind of salt we need and what kind of black pepper we need and all that other good stuff. It smells really good. Anyway, for the most part, this is done, and we can go ahead and plate it up. And there you go, chicken and rice. I'm going to tell you right now that this chicken and rice right here will blow your socks off. Probably the best chicken and rice you've ever had. Anyway, guys, that is that. Hopefully you learned from it. Till next time, talk to you later.